everyone. Today we are going to talk about how to make your images and your containers responsive. Responsive design is, of course, what we want. We want our designs to be responsive and look well on all devices, especially mobile devices. And one of the tools that we frequently use for that is Flexbox. Okay, now I'm going to explain that in a minute, but first of all, let's talk about what a responsive image is. Okay, that's a little bit different from Flexbox. Okay, let's say you want to make all the images in your layout responsive. Very simple. You redefine the image tag as having a width of 100% and a height of auto. And let me show you exactly how that looks. Okay, so here's some CSS, and this is from photostyles.css, which we did last time when we were making our photo grid. Now I added image with 100% height auto. I also added a float of left and a background color of some brown. Okay, so now how does that work? Now it actually did mess up my layout, and rightfully so, because we need for all of the images to flex, not just one. And our images, we created that particular page to live in a certain div structure, and it is owned by a class. Okay, so if I look at photostyles.css, that class is called photo. All right, so here's what happens when I do that, and you'll see that there's one image that is flex and everything else is not. Okay, so let's go to photos.html. So see, my layout is all messed up right now. However, I put that CSS in there, and what do you know? The Jaguar logo flexes. So that's the way to make all of your pictures flex. If you want them all to flex, this is your tool. So that's an easy, cut and dried, no nonsense way to make your images responsive. Very nice. Okay, unfortunately, because I want these images in a grid, however, I need to do things a little bit differently. So as you can see, they're stacking. They're not doing a beautiful grid like I wanted them to. So that's not going to work for us at all. Instead, we are going to build a flex image grid. Now this is still not going to solve our problem, but it's going to teach you all about CSS Flexbox. Okay, so a flexbox is ruled by a flex container. So in other words, you start with a flex container, and the flex container flexes to any device. And the flex boxes, you have pretty much two choices with them. On a larger screen, they will appear horizontally lined up, and on a smaller screen, watch this, they're going to stack. So this is perfect. So for example, here's an iPad size, here's a regular laptop size, and here's a phone size. So this is nice if you want your images to, rather than get smaller, if you want them to stack. This is also good for places where you have content and you want that content, so let's say that this was a paragraph of text, you want it always to be seen and never covered up. You use a CSS Flexbox for that. So I'm just using images as one example. You could use anything that you wanted. All right, so let's take a little look at how Flexbox works. Okay, so a Flexbox has columns and rows, and it handles them separately. So I'm just going to go straight to the graphical view here. If you choose row, you're going to get, unsurprisingly, images in a row. And if you choose block, if you choose column, your images are going to be in a block or a vertical direction. Okay, so very, very easy. You can also switch these up. It gets a little bit confusing. If you say, it also has a cross axis, and if you want to make your life difficult, you can, and you can say row reverse, which is going to give you a column, or column reverse, it's going to give you a row. All right, so yay. Okay, so the area of the document that you want to flex is called a flex container. And the divs inside of it are called flex boxes. So the first thing we do is we're going to go to a flex container. So the flex container is a parent element, and any element, a div, an aside, a main, a section, anything in HTML5 can be set to flex, and that's it will automatically become flexible. Now we know that the best way to do any of our responsive layout is by using classes rather than by redefining HTML tags. So I created a class here called .flexContainer display flex semicolon. So that means whatever I apply this class to is going to become a flex container. Okay, so let's see how that works out in Dreamweaver. All right, so I'm going to get rid of photostyles.css. I'm not going to save the changes, and photos. And here we have our flex HTML. So let's take a quick look at the source code here. I'm going to go to code view. All right, so as you can see, I have a div with the class flex-container. And then that's my flex container that holds all my flex boxes. And then I have a div class called flexbox, which holds all my images or whatever content I would want to flex. So I'm actually going to switch this up a bit. And I'm going to use an H3, and I'm going to say more information about jaguars here, period. And I'm going to close out that tag. All right, so now let's save it and let's take a quick look at our split view. All right, so if I look at this, the flexbox, this will always remain the same size. The difference is that it will stack for a mobile view. All right, so let's look at the CSS. Pretty simple. So we're incorporating two things. First of all, I'm actually incorporating it down here. We're incorporating a media query, which we started before. We've learned about before. So the media is screen. Max width is set to 480 pixels. So in other words, if it's 480 pixels, you're going to get a column of images. So you're going to make things stack on top of each other. And I have two classes, one for the flex container. And look here, it says display flex. It's a row. Okay, there are a lot of parameters to flex. Flex wrap will allow content to wrap. So in other words, if I have a grid of 30 images and I start to resize the screen, they are not going to get a cutoff. They're going to wrap or stack. Justify content centers it vertically within the box. That's right here. So that's centering vertically. And align items centers things horizontally. So if you want things perfectly centered, here's your solution. Justify content center semicolon and align dash items center. Perfect centering right there. Okay, so that's our flex container. It displays flex. So this is our parent class that holds all of the flex boxes. And then I have another class here called flexbox. Gave it a background color of white. Now notice I gave it a fixed height of 270 pixels. I don't have to do that, but the images that I have happen to be 270 pixels high. I also gave it a little margin and padding so it has a nice little rim around it. So at this moment, it looks like this. Now, let's mix it up a bit. Let's go to the CSS and let's take out the height. And let's see what happens. But notice it's still perfectly centered. And let's see what happens when we preview it in a browser. So I've been having a little trouble with Dreamweaver's preview here, so I'm just going to refresh that. And notice they stack up to a point. And my text flows as well. Okay, so that is our flex container. So it's actually extremely simple. This is an extremely simple example. All we're doing here is we are creating a flex container that has certain parameters. What parameters does it have? It has the parameter of display flex, a background color, yay. It is a row, not a column, so we want it to display horizontally. Basically what we're telling the browser is, hey, display this horizontally, but if the browser gets too small, wrap it. And by the way, we want it vertically centered and we want it horizontally centered. And hello, browser, we have some boxes in there. Let's give them a background color of white, a little bit of margin, a little bit of padding. And then we have our media query here. All right, so pretty simple. Now, there's only one problem with this, and we're going to fix that. Now that we understand what flexbox is, we're going to fix that in a little bit. So here's the basic idea of flexbox. Our content moves along, is able to, instead of resizing, our content stacks when we move to a mobile size. Okay, great. That sounds really, really cool, and I'm very happy about that. But these images don't flex, and depending on your layout, that could be a problem or not. If you want the images to flex also, that's a little bit of a different animal, but it still requires the understanding of flexbox. So let's go back and just talk about some of the parameters of flexbox. Okay, so here we have our flex container display flex, the basic CSS that gives us a flex container to hold our flex boxes. So it has several fundamental properties. Flex direction, is it vertical or is it horizontal? Flex wrap, will they wrap or will they not? If you don't say wrap, they don't wrap. Okay, so the default is no wrap. So we had our flexbox set to wrap, so they don't get cut off. They wrap or they stack. Okay, justify content, aligning horizontally, and align items. Okay, so here's our choices. Remember we said align items centered. If we want everything centered, here are our two best friends, justify content and center and align items center. You can also, this is the default, if you don't do anything, it will stretch to fill the box. You can also align columns to the top of the box, align items using flex start, and you can also align them to the bottom of the box using that. Okay, so now we already used our knowledge to create a flexible grid. Now we're going to go back to our problem here, which is that as nice as this looks and as great as it is, we want the images to flex. All right, so that's going to be in our next video. Thank you very much for watching.